A VPN, short for Virtual Private Network, is a privacy protection tool that is quickly becoming a must-have. But why do you need a VPN, and how does it work in the first place? A VPN helps your data travel through the internet safely, without big companies or cybercriminals being able to spy on your online activities. Also, a VPN swaps the real location of your device with a new one. This way, you can virtually travel to any country around the globe. So, who can benefit from a VPN? If you're worried about your online privacy, a VPN makes sure your identity and private information are not exposed when you go online. If digital security is your top priority, a VPN gives a nice additional layer of security. It encrypts your data so nobody could see what you send and receive. If you are a human rights activist whose freedom of speech is restricted, a VPN helps you to bypass censorship and speak to the world. Or, if you're on holiday in another country, with a VPN, you can bring your home entertainment anywhere you go. Here's a pro tip: check out Surfshark VPN. It has everything you need in a premium VPN, awesome speeds, and industry-leading protection that covers all of your devices. All you have to do is click connect. Secure your digital life and enjoy everything good that the internet has to offer with a VPN you can trust.
Click link in the description and get 81% discount for your first order. Preparing to stencil. Buy a plastic stencil at your local craft store or online. Pick a stencil design that will match the color scheme or style of the room you plan to put the furniture in. Make sure the stencil is made of thick plastic that can hold up to paint. Opt for a large stencil with a floral pattern or geometric shapes if you are stenciling a big piece of furniture like a wooden dining table or a rocking chair. Or choose a smaller stencil if you are stenciling a smaller item of furniture, like a small side table or an accent chair. If you are stenciling furniture meant for a kid's room, you could pick a stencil with animals on it or a striped pattern. Make your own stencil. You will need Adobe Photoshop to make your own stencil design. Pick an image off the internet that has bold lines, such as the outline of a building or a floral design. Print it off and use an X-Acto knife to cut it out onto a piece of clear plastic. You can then use your homemade stencil on the furniture of your choice. You may want to resize your chosen image in Photoshop so it will fit the dimensions of the item of furniture you are stenciling. Clean the furniture. Wipe down the surface of the furniture you are stenciling with a clean cloth to remove dirt and dust. You can use wooden furniture for this project, such as a wooden table or shelf. You can also use the stencil on fabric furniture. Make sure the fabric is made of cotton or denim, as these materials will soak up paint best. Wipe down the fabric with a cloth so it is free of dirt and dust before you stencil it. Sand and prime wooden furniture. If you are using wooden furniture for this project, sand off the top layer with sandpaper to remove the paint or varnish. Wipe the furniture with a clean cloth again after you have sanded it. Then, use a paintbrush to apply one coat of furniture primer. Let the first coat dry and then paint a second coat of primer. The primer will give the furniture a nice clean surface for stenciling. Look for furniture primer at your local hardware store or online. Paint wooden furniture with one coat of base color. Use a light or neutral color if you plan to paint on the stencil in a bold or bright color. This will help the stencil pop on the furniture. For example, you could use a gray or white base color if you are planning to use a bright blue or purple for the stencil. If you want the base color to be bold, go for a bright color. Then, use a neutral color for the stencil. For example, you could paint the furniture with a base color that is blue and use pale blue or white for the stencil color. You could also pick the base color and the paint color for the stencil based on the room you are going to put the furniture in. For example, if the color scheme in the room is teal and white, you could use these colors to paint the furniture. Applying the stencil. Place the stencil where you want it on the furniture. Lay the stencil flat on the area where you'd like it to appear. Make sure the stencil lays straight against the furniture. This will ensure it does not appear crooked or slanted when you paint it. For example, you could line up the edge of the stencil with the top edge of a table you are stenciling. Or you could place the stencil against the edge of a drawer on a bureau you are stenciling. You can also place the stencil on fabric furniture, such as the fabric portion of the seat of a chair or the top of a bench covered in fabric. Secure the stencil with painter's tape. Use a few pieces of painter's tape to attach the stencil to the furniture. Make sure the stencil is straight and will not move or shift while you are painting over it. Put paint on a small paint brush. Use acrylic-based paint or chalk paint in your chosen color. Dip a small paint brush into the paint. There should be an even amount of paint on the brush so it is wet, but not dripping. You can gently press the paint brush into a cloth to remove excess paint so it is not too wet or runny. Use a sponge for more control. Some people find it easier to use a small clean sponge rather than a paint brush to apply paint to the stencil. Dip the sponge in the paint so it is wet, but not dripping. The sponge can also make it easier for you to get clean, even lines when you stencil furniture. Dab the paint onto the stencil. Use small dabbing motions to apply the paint over the stencil. Work slowly, dabbing a light, even layer of paint over the stencil one section at a time. Do not brush the paint over the stencil, as this can lead to a sloppy-looking stencil on the furniture. Only apply a small amount of paint at a time, as you do not want the paint to smear or smudge under the stencil. Remove the stencil and let the area dry. Lift the stencil off the furniture and remove the painter's tape. Depending on the type of paint you used for the stencil, it may take a few hours for the paint to dry. Carefully touch the paint with your finger to confirm it is dry. As it dries, you can also look at the stencil to confirm you like it. You can also decide if you want to stencil other areas or spots on the furniture. Clean the stencil. Use a wet cloth to wipe off any excess paint on the stencil so it is clean and ready to use again if desired. The plastic material of the stencil should make cleaning it easy. Put the stencil pattern on different areas of the furniture. If you want to create a continuous pattern on the furniture, line up the stencil on the edge of the area you have already stenciled. Tape down the stencil and dab on the paint to continue the pattern. You can also place the stencil on different spots on the furniture, such as on each drawer of a bureau or on either side of a shelf, and apply it. Maintaining the stenciled furniture. Touch up the stencil as needed. Once the stenciled item has dried, stand back and give it a good look. Notice if there are any spots where the stencil appears lighter or incomplete. Use a small paint brush to fill in these areas with paint so the stencil looks even. Use very little paint when you touch up the stenciled item, as you do not want the paint to appear lumpy or too thick. Seal wooden furniture with a top coat. Use a top coat that is a polyacrylic. Apply one coat once the stenciled item has dried with a paint brush. This will give the stenciled furniture a nice, clean look and prevent the paint from peeling. Some paints already have a top coat built in. Check if the paint you use has a built-in top coat. If it does, you do not need to apply a top coat. Try a new stencil on the furniture if you want to change it up. The beauty of stenciled furniture is that you can always sand it down and repaint it with a different stencil whenever you want. If the decor in the room changes, you can repaint the furniture with a different stencil pattern or different colors. Make sure you sand and prime the furniture before you repaint it.